Welcome back to another edition of Built to Sell Radio, the podcast designed to help you punch above your weight in negotiation to sell your company. My name is 𝙎𝙊𝙐𝙇𝙇, and I'll be your host for today's activities. The interview you're about to hear is actually part two of a two-part interview with James Ashford. If you haven't had a chance to go back to listen to part one, I'd encourage you to start there because he talks about how he built GoProposal based on an initial £4,000 investment up to an 8-figure exit. In particular, he talks about the value building process of building a company. So what he did to build his company without ruining his marriage, how he shortened sales cycles, how he actually stimulated the creativity of his employees by using systems, which maybe sounds counterintuitive, but he'll explain it to you. How to leverage social media without making your company dependent on you. So lots of great stuff in part one of this interview. Today, we're going to turn the page and talk about how James went and sold his company in a spectacular 8-figure exit. Before we get there, though, I just want to remind you of a couple things. Number one, go to 𝙬𝙊𝙇𝙇 and you'll find the show notes for today's episode. So all of the links to the things James references in the show, the definitions, the M&A lingo that we use is all housed on James Ashford's show notes page, which you'll find at 𝙬𝙊𝙇𝙇. Number two, you may want to subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're a video lover, we're making some significant investments in the improvements of our video. So without giving away too much of the detail, head over to YouTube, type in a search box Built to Sell Radio, and I think you'll start to enjoy what we produce there on YouTube. All right, let's get into part two of this interview with James Ashford. Again, the focus in this second part of the interview is how James went and sold GoProposal. So we'll talk about how to impress the prospective acquirer in a management presentation, one of the key steps in the process of selling your company. He'll talk about how to create excitement about your deal, both among acquirers, but also among your team, which can often get a little bit nervous around the prospect of selling your company. So your team members need to be engaged at the right time. So we'll talk about how to do that. How to grow your company despite all of the energy you're putting into selling your business, how to maximize your negotiation leverage, and ultimately punch above your weight in a negotiation to sell your company. Here to tell you how he did it is James Ashford. Got it. That's super helpful. What was your reaction? I know you didn't actually say anything, but I'd be curious to know what thoughts went through your mind when the acquirer said, quote, "We all know how this works. What will your wife accept?" Just take me through the stream of consciousness inside James's mind when he uttered those words to you.
These are good questions, John, really good questions that I've not actually thought about before. I think I knew the amount, so I knew the answer to the question, but then my ego came in as well and thought, but what could we get? And although that was the number that we agreed, how big could the number become? Like, so all of a sudden now, did it matter what my wife would accept? Did it matter what I'd agreed with her, all those years ago? Or is there something else at play now? So your ego starts to fire up and to start to think, well, is now the right time? Should we scale it even more? Should we not have this conversation? And so I think perhaps firing on lots of different things. I've learned since that people have said he should never have asked that question. That was a naughty question for him to have asked in the first place. But I didn't take it as that.
Was there any part of you that said, well, hang on a second, like I'm my own person. I started this company. Like I'll decide what I want for it in concert with my spouse, but it's not her decision. It's our decision collectively. Like it sounded, you could have taken it. And I think I would personally have taken it like I would have been offended by that question because it suggests that I don't have my own opinion. My wife is actually just running my company for me and I'm just a shadow employee here. Like, did that go through your mind at all?
No, I tend not to take offense at many things, to be honest.
You're a better man than I.
I'm probably not, probably a naive job. I just kind of laughed it off, I think. And you know, it was on a webinar and I've got 3 people staring at me, and I've gone on to give them what for, because they're trying to kind of do a deal that I wasn't in agreement with. So I've gone on kind of with one thing, they flipped the whole conversation to me, and now I'm caught on the back foot. So my only thought was, get off this call as fast as you can and don't give anything away, because I'm now in territory that I have no idea. Like, I thought I was winging it to that point. I was certainly going to be winging it if I'd said anything to them.
Got it. So you get 3 inbound inquiries, one of which got pretty serious pretty quickly, it sounds like. Where does it go from there?
So this was coming up to the end of the year, December time, a lot of excitement, like, 3 companies interested in us. Where could this go? Is now the right time? Or this dream that I'd had since I was young, could this be realized, etc.? Can I finally prove to myself that I know how to build and sell a business? All these questions, right? And then another part of you thinking, should we do it? Should we keep going? And then they all just fizzled out. They all just kind of, wow, like one of them wasn't the right time. One of them, they had another business they were interested in and they weren't biting with conversations. And the other one, they were doing they were going through a round of funding themselves. And so it just all petered out. And so I think I've kind of found out in early January. So I was kind of licking my wounds in January.
And what did that do to your motivation and your confidence?
I think it boosted it. I think it was very flattering to think that maybe we're here in the right ballpark. So lots of thoughts going on in my head. And then I saw another company in the space that were a similar-ish size to us, they'd been going a little bit longer than us, sell. And I thought, wow, they've just sold. And then it made me think, maybe we could sell. Maybe now is the right time. What did they sell for?
Did you get a sense of multiple revenue? Nothing.
I never got to know. No, but I knew it was good, and I felt it was a healthy amount. I didn't know what though. And so I just had a word in myself, and I don't know where this analogy came from, John, but I thought it was like we never had we don't have proms here, but it's like a girl has looked at you and maybe given you a suggestion that she would go to the prom with you, but it's not coming to anything. I thought, you know what? Let's just get our best suit on. Let's do our hair. Let's get dressed up and let's go and ask the girl to the prom. Like, we're here. Let's just go and do it. And you know what? If now's not the right time, we'll learn a hell of a lot through the process, and we'll just crack on again in a couple of years' time and try again. But let's go for it. So I found the M&A company that had done the deal on the other business. And I said, do you think you could do something with us? And they immediately said, send me over like 3 years of monthly management accounts. Let's see what's going on. Had a look. And they were like, yeah, we think so. Can you get me over the 5 million goal that we're going for? Yeah, we can get you over that. So I'm like, let's go for it.
What did the M&A company ask for? You mentioned they wanted to see revenue. What else? Yes. What other numbers were important to them?
So they wanted to know and we've been thankfully tracking all of the numbers. They wanted to know what our churn was.
What was your churn at the time?
It's a good one. I think it was bobbling around 1.5-2% a month, which we thought was good. We learned it could be better, but 1.5-2% a month. Yeah. Okay. We had a really high conversion. Our marketing, we had such an automated marketing system with like 2 years worth of nurturing emails. Like, it was just a machine. So we just bring people in. It was a fully digitized journey. We had no salespeople, John. We didn't have one salesperson in the company.
How much did you charge for the product?
Like £120 a month, £120 a month.
Got it. SaaS model.
Yeah. When we got to 1 million, £1.5 million revenue, we had 12 members of staff. Like, they were a very efficient team. We were profitable. We had money in the bank, good churn. Our conversion rate from someone signing up, I'm forgetting these numbers now, but it was like 30 to 40% conversion rate. And that was, they didn't have to put the card details in, and we would convert them. And I think like the industry standard, like 5% or something.
So let me be clear. So 30% of people who take a free trial ended up converting into a paid customer.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that enabled your M&A guy at your company to basically run some spreadsheets and say, well, if we stick this number of people in the top of the funnel, it's going to generate a big.
There you go. There you
windfall.
go. And like our net promoter score was like 81, I think.
Wow.
Like world class. Like just creating incredible experiences was the whole thing. So all of the numbers look good and healthy, and we had all of the data immediately. I think, one thing that I think helped with that when I look back on it was, when someone requests the information, how fast you can give it to them. So can we have access to the M&A reports for the last 3 years? Yep. Within 5 minutes, there's the link. What else do you want? Like just because we were connected to the accounting firm, because we was in the accounting industry, and because of my pain that I'd experienced before, we invested so heavily into the finance function of GoProposal. Like 3% of our revenue was invested back into the finance function of that company. I had my hands on everything.
This is such an important point for our listeners to hear, because in particular, the speed with which you get back to potential acquirers just bolsters their confidence equally. If you're dragging your feet, it takes you a week to respond to a simple data request. It can really, really shake the foundation of the deal.
Yeah.
So this is great. This is great stuff. So you hire this M&A firm, and what happens next?
So that we hired them in the February, and then the first thing they did was, and they were just really good, and they kind of got us into shape, effectively, like financially into shape. And they wanted a narrative for everything that had happened since day dot. So if there were any anomalies in the numbers from day dot, kind of sticking points where the revenue hadn't grown or where things had dipped, whatever, they wanted to understand the narrative behind that. And we had to be able to supply that again fairly promptly. And whilst we were in very good shape financially and with our numbers that we had there and with the data that we had, what they explained was, but we're preparing you to be bought by a PLC. A FTSE 100 company.
Explain PLC for folks who don't know that acronym.
I think it's a public limited company. A company
listed,
on the stock. Yeah, listed company.
Yeah. So for American listeners, it would be, a public company effectively, which would have disclosure. It would have all sorts of regulations around financial reporting, and the bar to sell to a company like that is much higher than a private transaction.
Yeah. So the standards we've got to get things to is at a whole other level. And you may have a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year cash flow forecast. We need a 10-year discount cash flow forecast model. I still don't know what one of those is, but we had to have one and we had to build it out. And the other thing they said is, look, we're about to unleash, if we're able to sell, they're going to unleash top 4 accountancy firms into your business that are going to ask so many questions. And just for clarity, they set up a data room, and when we got to exclusivity, there was like 100 people from a top 4 accountancy firm in the business, and they were preparing us for that, so that when they come and ask the questions, it's already answered. So it was a very intense period of getting the business into shape. It was all in very good order. There were no skeletons in the cupboard, which they were very thankful for. There was nothing that we had to come up with a story for. Why did this happen? It was all logical, so that was very encouraging for them.
James, a lot of people listening to this are hearing you describe the depth of diligence and the depth of reporting that's required. And they're getting nervous, and they're saying, "Oh, well, I could never report at that level." And in your own admission, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you're not a trained accountant. You didn't go to study. You didn't go to the London School of Economics to get a business degree.
Not at all.
How did you deal with and get the business and deal with these narrative, requests for the narrative around your dips? Like, how did you prepare it all? Did that fall to Paul, your partner, or how did?
There's a friend of mine told me a story once about I'm just going to tell you this story, then we'll go into that, about the difference between the American table tennis team and the Chinese table tennis team. And the American table tennis team would always get beat by the Chinese. And for years, they couldn't understand why. They invested in coaching and training. And eventually the American coach went to the Chinese coach and said, look, I know we're fierce competitors, but can you tell me where we're going wrong? Like, we just always get beat by you. And they said, yeah, it's down to one thing. You keep trying to strengthen your weaknesses. We just strengthen our strengths. Like if you got a weak backhand, you're always going to lose on your backhand against someone with a good backhand. Like stop doing it. Just focus on your strengths. And I became early on within GoProposal focused on what my strengths were. I brought Paul in to help with the financial rigor that was required from day one. And he kept me to account and to those numbers. Like I would glaze over in management meetings and things, but I knew they were important. I knew we had to do them. And he kept the level of diligence that was required. And we made sure we were investing, like I say, at the right level so that, our accounts were reconciled on a weekly basis, that my team were reporting on all of these numbers, John, every single week. So different team members would be responsible for reporting on, all the sub metrics beneath those higher metrics as to what was feeding those numbers. They were accountable for those. So I empowered other people to do that. And I was aware of the direction of the business and what we needed to do to strategically steer it. If you're not in that position now, if you don't have a set of management accounts, in reality, it's going to take you 3 years to get them in shape. Now, that might seem like a long time, but it's better than never. And you need to get started with it now. Like invest in that finance function is all I could really encourage. Now, we're talking about the worst case scenario here for us, which is a small company. And because we'd never taken investment, if we had taken investment, that would have forced that diligence to have been done earlier on to have got the investment. Because we'd never done that, we'd never been through that process. And so, yeah, I think I've lost my train of thought there, John.
No, I think I think that the essence of what you're saying is invest in finance. You have certain strengths and you know what those are. They're not finance. So you brought in Paul as an investor and he brought rigor to the business on those measures. And that's super helpful. So the M&A firm, basically creates the book and the story and the narrative and what happens next. They shop this. I mean, there are some specific, natural strategic acquirers, right? Obviously Intuit, Sage, Xero, Microsoft. I mean, there's some big companies. Was it just an exercise of going to them, or did you create a much longer list? Did you include private equity in that list? Like how did you guys?
Sure. So they managed the process and they were brilliant. So they built out a list of potential acquirers and they
give them a plug. What's the name of the firm?
They're called 𝙎𝙬𝙇𝙇, 𝙎𝙊𝙐𝙇 based in Bristol in the UK. So we created a list of A, B's and C's, like who are A's, who are our dream partners, in the industry, have the money, who we could benefit from, who we like, etc. And then we had the B's, and then going down into C's, which is more of private equity, and whereby, I love serving the industry, the accounting industry. Like I wanted to bring about change in the accounting industry, not just for the accountants' benefit, but I wanted to help them and still do, to get the businesses that they serve to invest more in the finance function, right? So I didn't just care about the accountants, I care about their clients as well. So we were looking for acquirers that could really help us to scale this and help us to continue with that impact. We've done good work. We had huge fans in the space. So this wasn't just, it wasn't just a case of cashing out, because it absolutely wasn't. We wanted to find the right acquirer as well. So we broke it down into A, B's and C's. We produced an IM, which is an information memorandum, which is effectively a brochure, sales brochure of the business outlining. It doesn't identify us by name, but anyone in the space would be able to guess who we are very easily. And then that was kind of put out to these businesses. And then off the back of that, it was then who wanted a management presentation from us.
Got it. So, James, I think people get who would be on your A list. Again, those would be strategic acquirers, Intuit, Sage, whatever. C, I mean, there's an entire ocean of private equity companies and many of which would focus on software businesses. So I get a sense of who those players might be. Who's in the B bucket?
I think it was more peripheral companies that could have an interest, let's say for like a project management tool like an Asana or something like that, perhaps, that has an interest in businesses that you know, it could connect to them in some way. So it was kind of much more broader. They may serve the accounting space, but they're also serving other customers as well. So the A's were very intentionally focused on our specific industry. And then as we moved into the B's, still software companies, I would say, but a broader client base.
Got it.
So they may have a vested interest of wanting to get into the accounting industry potentially, you see.
As a gateway into it. Got it. So
yes.
James, how many companies on the long list got the IM? Do you recall, like, ballpark?
I don't recall. I would say probably like 20 or so. They maybe got a list of 20 to start with, and then maybe 10, 12 of those got the IM, something like that.
Got it. So 10 signed a confidentiality agreement and got the confidential information memorandum. Of the 10, how many requested management presentations?
6.
6 management presentations. What were they like?
So it was in COVID. So were they all done online? Some were, and some were overseas. So some were done online, but they were done in person as well. Sorry. Now it was what I wanted to do here with the management presentations is to start showing, because this was a fear of ours and we knew it'd be a fear of theirs, that how dependent is the business on me because of my outward projection of the business. So the management presentations, other than me just making a brief introduction, were deliberately delivered by Heather to prove that operationally this business is not dependent on me. And it really wasn't. Like, I would be involved in annual planning sessions and quarterly planning sessions and brought in as I was needed. But I was actually I hold the business back, because I would, like, what's the phrase they called me? An accidental diminisher. I would accidentally diminish the team if I was involved in meetings, because I'd be quick to come up with answers and step in and new ideas and all this stuff, right? So I wasn't involved in the business. Heather drove those management presentations. They were very daunting, I guess, to start with, but we've done lots of presentations, and I knew that the structure of them was solid. I know how to construct a presentation. I know how to construct an argument. I know how to present it and sell a good vision of the future. When we did it to one company, and this was very intimidating, there were like 20 members of staff, board members there, senior board members, CEO, everybody was there. At the end of it, the main guy said, "That is how management presentations are done. You have just set the new standard for a management presentation."
Why? What did she do that was so impressive?
It was just a very thorough argument as to how we'd got to where we had. It was very, very rich. It was something very different that the software companies weren't thinking about in terms of the education. We had a completely digitized sales journey. So we weren't just selling the software, we were selling our digitized journey as well, that these software companies that are reliant upon, assisted sales journeys, they could see the benefit in all these stuff. None of these software companies had the concept of a book, but they now understood the importance of education. And so there was we had such a rich product, I think, and a rich offering, John, in the first place. They could see the passion. They could see everything that we've talked about, the playbooks that we have in place, how everything's fully systemized and documented, how we're able to achieve net promoter scores that not one of the companies that we presented to could get close to. Our staff retention rate is enviable. So, and obviously these bigger companies have much more pressures than us. We were able to kind of operate in a little incubator, but we had many things that were strong, and it was just watertight, John. We didn't have to make anything up. Our numbers were what they were. We could report on them with great confidence, and everything was solid, I think, really.
Fantastic. So you have these management presentations, of which there are 6. Heather nails them, it sounds like. What happens next?
So in one of the management presentations, there was something that happened that I didn't pick up on during the meeting. So we came out. So Heather is a young female. She's an absolute, she like reads books on stoicism for fun. Like she's just a monster, right? Just brilliant, just such empathy and really understands how to nurture the team. Brilliant leader of GoProposal. We came out of one of the management presentations and she said, "How do you think that went?" I said, "It was great," but I gave all the feedback. She said, well, I didn't think so. And I said, why? She says, well, because every time you asked the question, every time she asked the question, they answered me. So she is a female in an all-male meeting, effectively, with maybe an odd female in there. She was asking these questions and they were just bypassing her with the answers. And she said,
I want to make sure I'm clear on what happened. So Heather in the management meeting would ask a question of a potential acquirer.
Yes.
The potential acquirer would answer it, but instead of looking at Heather, they looked at you.
Yes, correct.
Got it. Thanks. That's helpful.
And Heather's key thing was that if this is how they're talking to me, how would they talk to the team if they acquired us? Now, we have brought the entire team on the journey up until this point. The team know we're going into these conversations. They don't know who we're talking to, but they know we're going to these meetings. And this is very unusual. And they found this unusual. Like, why are you telling the team? I'm like, well, because we're very transparent. They know the journey we're going on. They know why we're doing this. They know how they're going to benefit, right? Before we went into the management presentations, we consulted with our team. We said to them, this is what's the next stage of the process. Do any of you have any concerns? Are there any questions that you would like us to be asking during these meetings so you have a voice?
So what did they know? What did they assume they would get out of the sale? Like, what was in it for the 12 employees minus Heather that...
Well, we paid an okay salary, but we weren't like at the top end of the market. So they know that they would be getting a more competitive wage for sure. There's greater security that, we were very solid and we have money in the bank and everything else. But as a small business, there's all vulnerabilities attached to you, things that come up that you don't expect. So far greater securities that would come with a larger business and more benefits as well that they can offer that we can't necessarily offer. But also it's about, to my mind, because we're achieving such great things in terms of our metrics, in terms of, our retention rate, our client, our net promoter score, like to say to Jack, who was the head of client success, Jack, all of a sudden you become a very valuable person in the world when you've been able to help to scale a SaaS business because he was with us from like the first few months from here to here and to successfully sell the business. All of a sudden, you'll become a more valuable person in the new world that we're going into. And if that world didn't serve you, your services to be able to go to any SaaS business and say, I can help you to scale, I can help you to get these numbers, and I can help you to exit, you become a very valuable person in the world. So what they all got was a story. That was the only thing I ever told them. I never made a promise beyond that.
Got it. That's super helpful. So Heather says, look, I didn't love that meeting. I'd ask a question, and instead of answering me, they gestured towards you. Where does it go from there? I assume that one acquirer was not Heather's choice. Not
the choice, but that got fed back to them, and we got to have another conversation, and we got to help to calm everything down and to balance it all. But we were in a strong...
How did it get back to the acquirer that was Heather's?
Through the M&A company, through the M&A. Yeah. And, because we weren't desperate to sell. We didn't need to sell. People use all these phrases like we didn't have a burning runway or whatever people call these things. Like we have money, we have ideas, great team, great client base, growing at a really healthy rate. Like it was just because it was the right time for everybody. One of the other reasons I also knew it was the right time was because my team, the likes of Jack, were asking me questions and I no longer had the answers. I was having to say, look, you're going to have to go and find someone in this role, in this company and ask them. We're beyond anything that I know anymore. So I knew that we were getting to, and I had started to build mentorship around my team from external sources. All the senior team had external mentors, but I knew that we were getting to a point where ideally we needed a brotherly arm around us to help us, you see.
What was the treatment of your book in the offering? You were going to the market for sale effectively in the combination. Yeah. You'd had these 6 meetings with management presentations. Was it at this point you had said that you would be prepared to sell the copyright to the book along with the company, or was that something somebody specifically asked for?
No, it was always in my mind to sell all of this lock stock.
And James, Were you ever squeamish about selling something so personal as a book? Like all of a sudden, I mean, that's part of you, right? That's you own the copyright. You've written it. It's your opinion. And all of a sudden you're effectively selling it to a third party who may bastardize it, make it say, like they then own it and can do whatever they want with it. Did you ever contemplate how comfortable you were with that?
No. It was a very, I always had that, I think, a healthy distance from things. These were tools. These are devices. Like if you see my LinkedIn profile, John, we're very active on LinkedIn. It's not me posting on LinkedIn. My team are using my LinkedIn profile to post. Now, if you start to watch my LinkedIn profile, you'll spot the ones that are me because they'll be much more personal but anything that's related more to sales of, like there'll be one going out soon. I went to an accounting firm a couple of weeks ago. I went and helped them for free, just gave a session to their team. That got filmed. That'll get posted in a week or two on LinkedIn, right? So everything was up for grabs. These are all tools to drive the growth of the business. My LinkedIn profile, for the duration that I'm with the acquirer, the Instagram profile, everything, the book, all of the content. And it was it was all designed that way from the start. So I very much, as I was writing it, I knew what I was creating and what I'd be handing over. This book is the #1 best-selling book for practice management for accountants in the world.
Wow. That's incredible.
And that's again just giving everything away, sharing everything that we possibly can. All of the learnings have gone into that to genuinely try and make a difference in people's lives. Like you can't go into this 99% and thinking, but it only really makes a difference if you then buy my product. Like it's all in. Firms don't. They always like we've had firms sign up for GoProposal, and they've messaged me personally because they've left us for whatever reason, it's not right or whatever, and said, James, I'm really sorry. It's just not right. We're going to go with your competitor. I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm just trying to help you. I want what's right for you. Like, when people used to come to us at events and things and they'd say, right, why should we use your product over your competitor? My response and the response from my team is, maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. What's going on? Let me help you out. Like, if you're just in the genuine service of others, so people would leave and I'd be like, look, I like you. I want you to do well. Let's keep in conversation. Let's keep in touch. So there's an accountant. He posted, I did a post today saying my new book's coming out, and he messaged and said, can't wait to get it. I'm going to get my entire team to use it. They love your last book. I'm like, cool. Once they've all read it as a book club, I'll come and join you on the last session. I know he uses our competitor's product and I couldn't care less. Couldn't care less.
That's incredible.
I'm able to help him.
Let's get back to the acquisition. So you had 6 management presentations. What happens next?
So they are then kind of contacted afterwards and said, like, who wants to make an offer? 3 of them didn't want to make an offer. They were very complimentary. They kind of knew, some of them knew where they'd have to be ballpark wise, and they knew they weren't going to get there. One of them was an investment company, because my M&A company are very good, and they kind of explained where it would kind of need to be for them to be.
And was the M&A company still using your 4 times revenue number?
No.
How did they go from originally when you did these conservative estimates? You're like, oh, if we can get 4 times, did they like at what point did you start to say it needed to be more? Like, did the M&A firm say you're really shooting low here, or did you evolve over time? Like, how did it go from 4 to something more?
So that was just our conservative thinking, naive and conservative thinking from a long time ago. So once we started to get closer to this and started to work with the M&A company, we started to understand where this could actually be, what the market.
How did you come to understand that? Because the reason I'm asking this, James, is like I think a lot of people listening would be curious to know, like, how do they find out what is kind of market for a business like theirs? Like, did the M&A firm say, James, I think we can get X for the business? Or did you see in a conference someone got more than 4 times? Like, how did that come about?
So they they went and did their discount cash flow forecasting model. They know the space, they know the industry, they know what they've sold other businesses for and what they've helped other businesses to achieve. And then I don't know what their other sources. No, I do know what their other sources are actually. There was something that it was some report or some magical report. I feel it's stateside somewhere. I can't remember what it is, but the kind of, I know that informed part of their decision. And
what did the report say was realistic or possible?
I can't remember. But they came up with 3 numbers, and I can't reveal them because one of them was actually the number very close to the number we got. So in terms of the numbers they shared with me, there was like this level here, and then there were 2 crazy bigger numbers. But it was the number that we were going for was very close to what we actually got.
So there was, and I know we can't reveal that because it's under NDA and so forth. So the M&A firm, if I'm understanding, came back and said, James, I think it's somewhere like conservatively, I think we can get X. Maybe we can get X plus X, higher. And then like if we hit it right out of the park, then we could get potentially this third number.
Yeah.
Which of the 3 did they get? The first, the second, or the third?
It was the first one. The other 2 were pie in the sky, and they were based on features that we were going to be developing in the future. And if they were to consider those features, then
got it.
There was a massive.
And what was your reaction to the number they thought they could get for it?
Oh, brilliant! Like we hit, and more everything we wanted to do. We were going to do what we came here to do.
Got it. Can you describe the moment you told Becky that it was real? Up until this point, it's all just theoretical, and it's all like an offer, but they could take it away. You've got due diligence; they could take it away. But can you describe the moment that you told her that in fact it was actually real and it wasn't going to be taken away?
Well, that was only when it had actually happened and the money hit, John. So I was very clear. You have just to explain just a bit. I'm not avoiding your question. I will answer your question, but just to explain a bit before that. So we granted exclusivity to them, and it had been a hectic, stressful, intense period up until that. And Daisy, the lady from the M&A company, rang me and said, "Get ready for what's coming next with the due diligence." And I laughed. I'm like, "Are you joking?" I said, We've done it. We've got everything prepared. She says, "Get ready for what's coming next." So that was in May. The deal closed at the end of September. So May, June, July, August, September, 5 months.
Wow.
The intensity of that period, I've never experienced anything like it in my life. I woke up at 4:30 a.m. every day with no alarm clock for the first part. And then I started waking up at 3:30 a.m. with no alarm clock. In that time, over 1,000 questions were asked of the business, bearing in mind we were in such incredible shape. And of those 1,000 questions, some of them warranted and 1,000 is not an exaggeration. I'm not saying that as hyperbole. There was over 1,000 questions. Some of them warranted 40-page answers. The intensity was crazy. And the beauty, the saving grace in this, because the team knew of the journey that we were going on, I was able to bring the team on board and they were able to get involved with things. And I had on my whiteboard here in my office these kind of like, I think they're about 6 milestones with dates next to them. And these were all hurdles I knew we had to get over before we got to the end. And every single one of these hurdles is either at this hurdle here, it all ends, or it's allowed to continue to the next hurdle. And it only completes when that last hurdle is hit and you hit refresh on your bank and the money's there. Like, I was very mindful of that. So I have never been through a period like it in my life. And bearing in mind, the business has to continue running throughout this process, not just continue running, continue growing. I am completely removed from the business. Heather, the ops director, can only spend 50% of the time on the business. So everything that we put into the foundations up until that point kept it growing. We closed in the September. They wanted to see the sales figures from August to make sure they were still going up, right? So all of this stuff was in place. It was crazy. And one of the milestones I want to tell you about was, it was the most unknown element to me. And it was the security of the app and the quality of the coding. It was 2 reviews that had to be done on this milestone. I knew what the finances were. I knew what the team was like. I knew I knew everything else, right? I just didn't know how good the coding was. I trusted my developers. I didn't know. I kind of knew how secure the site was because we had integrations with Intuit and various things, and we had to achieve certain standards, but I didn't fully know. And they bring in external companies whose job is to find everything that's wrong, right? So we got this report, and to coin a phrase, they ripped us a new one. Like, they just go to town because that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to find everything that's wrong. So they told us everything that was wrong with the code, everything that was wrong with the security. There's an amber light system, red, amber, green. You got the report. And then we went into a meeting the following week, right? To go and to actually now have it presented to us. But I had a trick up my sleeve. So I played my trick, not told them, and we went into the meeting. And we sat in the meeting, and for an hour, I had to listen to these 2 companies in front of all of Sage, everyone who's making this decision, tell us everything that was wrong, the vulnerabilities, the failings in the coding. And I got to the end of the process, and I just said to him, thank you so much for everything you have shared with us here. Whether this deal goes ahead or not, you have just pointed out all the ways that we can now strengthen our product. I'm so grateful for your expertise, and I thank you for it, first and foremost, right? There's no point in being defensive, yeah?
Sure.
And do you know what? One of the feedbacks that we got was our response to it was so important, more so than any issues they came up with. It's the fact that we were demonstrating that we could work with them, they could work with us, that we were open to change, that we could be challenged, right? But what they weren't expecting was my next line, which was, thank you so much for all that. And by the way, we've fixed everything. And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, you gave us the report last week. My devs have sorted it. With the exception of these 2 or 3 minor things here, which we need to talk to you about, we've fixed everything else. And they said, well, how have you fixed this one? And I had my dev on the call. He said, well, we've done this and this and this. Yeah, that works. And how about this one? Well, we've done this. Yeah, that's a really smart solution. Wow. And so I went through, and then at the end of it, it said, well, do you know what? It said, no one would ever get full marks in this. And it's actually not that bad, really, what you've got. And the fact that you've responded in this way is amazing. And so I just gave us the best chance I possibly could of smashing down these hurdles.
Amazing. And great response to, what is oftentimes a very delicate process of diligence and being kind of scrutinized in that way. Back to my question. So it's September.
Yes.
The deal closes.
Yes.
How did you tell Becky?
So it was the most, after the intensity of it all, and on the final day I woke up at 2:30 a.m. Like I just wanted. Like,
it's going backwards, James. It's 4:30, 3:30.
I'm telling you.
At 2:30.
I'm telling you. And it was really intense because what we did was, because we had such a strong following, we'd produced, I'm still not avoiding your question.
I'm starting to wonder.
We'd produced a launch video of how we were going to announce this to the market. So we developed an announcement strategy. It was really beautiful. And we were filming right up until like that day. It was such, even on the closing deal day, we're still filming and getting people's footage and stuff. So it was very, very intense. And then all this crazy period, it was meant to close, I think, at 5 p.m. on that Friday. And they pushed it back and said, no, it needs to be till 6 p.m. I'm like, Jesus. And then, no, it's going to be 7 p.m. And we're like, oh, please just get this done. Is it ever going to happen? Are they going to find something that we're still at this stage, right? And then we all jumped on a call. All of their Sage team, my M&A team, their legal team, the top 4 accountancy firms that were brought in. Everyone sits there and says, right, because everything's been signed at this point. You've signed all the docs. We've got all the signatures in. Is everyone happy with that? Everyone happy with the signatures? Yeah. Well, that's that then. That's the deal done. And it was the most uneventful, anticlimactic moment. And I put the lid down and I went to Becky, who was my childhood sweetheart, like Fanta in school. And then we got to go out with each other in later life. I was living in London at the time, actually, John. It's a nice story. And she invited me and I was living there. We were just friends. And she says, James, will you please move back home to Doncaster? And I said, Bet, I'd only move back if you'd marry me. She says, you're the only person I'd ever marry. So I came back and we got married before we even started going out with each other. We agreed to marry before we started going out with each other. So very, very close. And I went and hugged, and my kids knew what was going on as well. So we all hugged, and I cracked open a bottle of champagne in the garden, sprayed it over everyone. And that was that.
Amazing. Amazing. Are you up for a quick lightning round before I let you go?
Yeah, man, hit me.
A couple of quick questions. All right. I'm only asking for a short answer. I won't follow up. I'd just be curious to know as a last final parting shot.
Let me get some more water just in case I run out.
More water's fine. Go hydrate.
Right, it's the third bottle, John. We're doing good. Right, I'll do fast, if I can, fast answers. Hit me.
The slimiest trick a prospective acquirer tried to pull over on you?
There wasn't one. There was. I had all these horror stories before of what they might do and what they might not do. There was none of that. Everyone was very respectful.
Awesome. Biggest mistake you made in the selling process?
Biggest mistake we made.
Another way to ask this question is like, what do you wish you had known before you started the process?
Do you know, I think we were led very expertly with the M&A company. I'm so grateful that we brought them on board. They really upgraded the business on the journey. So I don't think particularly we made any mistake. I'm trying to think personally. We went and viewed a house that was a few £1 million house with a swimming pool and various things. And I think that might have been a mistake. Because of, you then starting to dream. It feels a little bit more real once you've literally dipped your toe in the water. One thing I got right is I kept my group of friends very tight. I only told people very close to me and just blocked out everything else and kept my peloton around me very, very tight.
Lowest emotional point you reached during the selling process?
I've probably not got many bleak answers for you here. It was. Oh, I've got it. We were going away. The family were on the drive in the car, ready to go away. I think we're going away for the weekend. They were packed. I'd had 40 questions in from the law firm, and one of those questions was one of the 40-page answers once. It was very intense. I had all of my team done. And I was literally standing up from this computer here. The kids are there in the car. Come on. I said, I'm coming. So I sent that email off with all of the answers in a massive spreadsheet with all of the answers. I'm coming now. And I made a mistake. I pressed refresh on my inbox and I saw an email come in that says we need these answers. And the next one come in that said we need these. And I opened them up and I scrolled through the sheet and I saw over 100 questions, and I just literally screamed out, "No!" And I just sat with my head in my hands, and I went out, and I said, I cannot believe how many questions that Anne's asking. I cannot believe that I've never experienced anything like it. And my son, who was 11 years old, 10 at the time, and I'd confided in certain details of the deal, he said, "But the thing is, Daddy, they are wanting to pay you a lot of money for this, so why don't you just answer the questions?" And I said, yeah, fair enough.
Sage wisdom from an 11-year-old. I love it. You've been very generous mentioning Built to Sell, and so I'm grateful for that. But what other resources did you turn to for educating yourself about the exit process? Was there a conference you went to or a course you took or another book you read? Like, what did you find helpful?
Tony Robbins' Business Mastery course I found very helpful, and that gave me some really good foundational understandings from the start. E-Myth Revisited is a very good book, and I kind of always held that and your book in a similar framing, that is talking about building a franchisable model of a business built to sell. And I'm not just saying this because I'm on a call with you, but I found that yours was much more practical and applicable, and I agreed with it, whereas there's parts of E-Myth that I don't necessarily agree with, but I found that to be useful. I love Daniel Priestley's stuff, and it is helping to understand of business models.
Key Person of Influence. We'll put that
Key Person of Influence, but there's another book which is here, which is called 24 Assets, which he talks about how how do you build assets in your business, IP assets and various things. And we'd done that from the start. So all of the digital assets, the playbooks, we'd protected everything that we could protect. And one of the things, like with software, you can't necessarily patent the software, but you can protect the processes. And one of the easiest and best ways to protect the processes is to write a book on it. Like if you're a published author on that subject, you own that. Like people can't take that away from you. So yeah, he that was really good. And then there's some other books there about the culture. So Brave New Work by Aaron Dignan was a very good book around the culture. The Netflix book, which is No Rules Rules, was very good around our culture as well. And then I love stuff by Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if you've come across his stuff. Do the Work, The War of Art, and helping you to overcome resistance and to power through. So I think they're my main books. Oh, just one other one as well, actually, which is very interesting and quite obscure. Not a lot of people get onto this one. It's called The Starfish and the Spider, which is about creating a starfish organization versus a spider one, whereby a spider organization, all of the knowledge sits in the head. And if the head gets cut off, the organism dies. Whereas with a starfish, the information for how the organism lives runs through every part of it. So if you chop it in half, each half grows a new half. So it's about how do you create a starfish organization.
Love that. We'll put all that in the show notes. Last question. What did you do to commemorate this win? Please tell me you bought something. Did you end up buying the car, the house with the pool? Like, tell me the trophy you purchased to commemorate this success.
Do you know what I just said to my wife today? We're the crappiest millionaires in the world, right? We're absolutely rubbish. Let me tell you this true story, right, John? The next day, I took the kids to watch the new James Bond film, whatever it was, the latest James Bond film, right? So we went to the cinema and went to the 4D cinema and went in there. It's cool. And I took them to Five Guys afterwards. Bearing in mind, I have got an 8-figure sum sat in my bank account at this point. I took them to Five Guys afterwards. So they ordered what they wanted. And they said, can we get a refillable drink? I said, you're not having one each. And I made them share a refillable drink. Yeah. So I think I need to catch up. I still need my brain to catch up with where I am. You know, we're not trained how to spend money. But I bought a cliched Rolex watch, which is a tool watch, a deep dive watch, but it's a sea dweller, and it was a 2017, which was the year that GoProposal was born. So I got this. I paid like $1,000 extra because it had all the stickers on it, just so I could sit and peel the stickers off. I didn't want it to be on anyone else's hand, so I got that. I bought my wife a Range Rover. We helped a lot of family out. We helped a lot of family members, which was again one of the most heartwarming and most exhilarating parts of it, to be able to ring family members up and say, we just want to send you some money over so you can get a takeaway tonight to celebrate with us. And can you just check the money's in the bank? Say, oh, yes, we send like £100. Oh, thank you. That's great. Yeah, brilliant. And then we say, right, just refresh again. And then refresh again. And a bigger digit has just hit. And they're like sobbing on the phone. And so to be able, and these people, John, these are hardworking people, worked far harder than me in my life, and I just happen to be in an industry and a sector where I'm able to do something that has generated this, generational wealth. And so that was great for us. We've done some charitable stuff, which was cool, but we're still in the same house. Like we're 6 months on. I'm only just getting around to getting the bathroom sorted out. Do you know what? It doesn't matter how much money you've got. I still can't get a tiler or a plumber. I don't care how rich you are. So we're still making decisions like that. But I did buy a car. So I went I'd ordered a Porsche Panamera, and it was a long waiting list, because this is the other thing as well, right? The house prices are through the roof in the UK. You can't get a house anywhere. And this microchip problem, there's no cars about, so I can't even get a car. So it's the worst time, or probably the best time to hit the cash, right? And so I went to the car garage and I said, look, I want to go over the spec again. And they said, well, we've just had this one brought in from a Chelsea footballer. They've just, a Premiership League player, he's just brought this Panamera in. And I'm like, I'll take it. And it's a turbo. So I went and I got that and had all the cover taken off the car. And that was a very exciting moment. Yeah.
I'd say you're doing pretty well as a millionaire. I'm just saying. I think you're figuring it out. Maybe a slow learner, but I think you're figuring it out. My favorite is you're making the one kid get the refillable cup. I think
Yeah, they can share. There's only one each. I'm not mental.
Oh man, I've enjoyed this conversation. I could do it again and again. James, your book is called Selling to Serve.
My first book is Selling to Serve, and I have just launched I've hit publish about 2 hours ago, but it takes Amazon just a few hours to approve. So the next book is called Untapped. And this is a piece of work I did last year with 100 accountancy firms to show them, and it's applicable to both books are applicable to any industry. If you just Control F and replace accountant with your industry, they both work. And this was a piece of work I did last year with 100 accountancy firms to prove to them that they're sat on a diamond mine of clients. Your greatest opportunity you have now is with the current client base that you've got. I'm a firm believer of that. And I show these 100 firms how to grow their revenue within 30 days. From existing clients alone, they grew their collective revenue by over £1 million from existing clients. And the book outlines that journey and how I switched them from being in a scarcity mode. And if I can just leave people with this thought, John, there's so much negativity and doom and gloom in the world. We're on the back end of a pandemic. There's rising fuel prices. There's rising energy prices here in the UK. There's so much skepticism and negativity and uncertainty. But if we can block that out and we can stop thinking in this scarcity mindset, there is great abundance as well. You are enough, you have enough, you deserve to get more. And we have to fundamentally, you don't even have to be positive. You just have to block out the negative. Like if you just do that, switch off the news, stop talking to those loser mates that you've got and just start speaking with positivity and belief and with abundance. Get around. I love what you're doing here, John. I love the work that you do. I love the community that you're building and the work that you do with them to create that positivity, to create that belief and to show people. And this is why I've loved being on this here. And thank you so much for this opportunity to show people it's possible. As entrepreneurs, no one's figured this out. We're all on a journey. We're all learning. We're all work in progress. And if we can throw a hand up and reach a hand up and ask for help when we need it, and I have asked for it many, many times, and have the courage to do that, as well as having the generosity to throw a hand back down and to grab the people behind you as well. If we can all do that, we're all trying to do this for the right reasons. We're all trying to make our lives a bit better, our families a little bit better, our communities, the world a bit of a better place because of what you're trying to do with your entrepreneurial business. And if we can all help each other to achieve that, then that's a wonderful thing.
Well said. And I'm going to put a pin in there. I think you did an amazing job of finishing up. So the book is called Untapped. Literally available as when this goes live, it'll be available. And if you want to get a 2 for grab Selling to Serve as well, Untapped, available where you buy books. James, thanks for doing this.
Thanks, John. Thank you.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview with James Ashford. For all the show notes, including links and resources that we referenced on the show, please head over to �builttosell.com and search out James Ashford's show notes page. There you'll find everything you need to process and act on some of the things that James talked about today. While you're there, consider nominating a guest. Our best episodes come from people like you, our audience, who nominate entrepreneurs with an interesting exit story. So just go to �builttosell.com/nominate. As a reminder, we're making some investments in our YouTube channel. So throw Built to Sell Radio into a YouTube search bar, hit subscribe, and I think you'll enjoy the video content you're about to get over the coming months. James also referenced creating systems in both part 1 and part 2 of his interview. If that's something that's of interest to you, we put together an ebook on creating standard operating procedures. It's free. Just go to builttosell.com/SOP for standard operating procedures, builttosell.com/SOP. Today's show, as always, was produced by Colin Morgan. Special thanks to Dennis Labataglia for doing the audio and video engineering. And a great big thank you to our community of certified value builders who bring our message to you. Until next time, we'll talk to you again.